Good morning, class, and welcome to your next vocabulary video. We were so happy with your performance on the last test that we thought we'd make another one. So, without further ado, here we go for vocabulary 5. Now, this set of words, you have a few more. You have 15 words for these next 2 weeks instead of 10. Half of them have words that you can use to describe characters and what they're like and character traits. And then the other 5 have to do with academic vocabulary, words that you're going to hear in your English class. So we'll cover the academic vocabulary first, and then we'll go over your character traits. So your first word for this next 2 weeks is expository. Expository means to explain or to inform. So when we ask you to write an expository essay or an expository piece, you are writing something that informs your audience about a topic. Here are some examples of expository text: newspaper articles, research papers, biographies, brochures, speeches. All of these are examples of expository text because they're explaining something. Your next word is connotation. While I'm sure many of you already know this, just as a review, connotation is a secondary meaning of a word. It's those emotions or feelings that are associated with the word. And we talk about connotation based on how we feel about the word. When you're talking about connotation, it's usually going to be positive, neutral, or negative. Let's look at this set of words that have a similar meaning but different connotations: slim, scrawny, tiny, pipsqueak, lean, and trim. Slim and trim and lean probably have a positive connotation. You would not be insulting somebody if you called them lean or trim. However, you might be insulting someone if you call them scrawny or if you call them pipsqueak, because those two words have a negative connotation associated with them. So be mindful of the connotations of words, especially when you're doing a writing. Associated with connotation is denotation, which is the direct or literal meaning of the word. And if you're having a difficult time remembering the difference between connotation and denotation, remember that denotation and dictionary both start with the letter D, and you will find the denotative meaning of a word from the dictionary. So, just to reiterate, dictionary and denotation both start with D, and you find the denotative meaning of a word from the dictionary. I love this picture. Connotation and denotation. Denotation, what you see just by looking at the picture, and connotation is what the picture really means. Or if we're talking about a text, denotation is what you read just by reading the words, and connotation is what the text actually means. Okay, next academic vocabulary word is predict. And predicting is a reading strategy that involves using text clues to make a reasonable guess about what will happen next in the story. So an example from the story that we just read, The Scarlet Ibis, many of you predicted Doodle's death when the scarlet ibis fell from the bleeding tree. If you were thinking, oh, the scarlet ibis just died, I wonder if that's related to Doodle, then you were making predictions. Next word for academic vocabulary is idiom. And an idiom is a common figure of speech whose meaning is different from the literal meaning of its words. Another way of saying this is that the meaning of the phrase is different from the actual meaning of the words inside the phrase. So let's look at a couple of examples. It's raining cats and dogs. Obviously, cats and dogs are not falling from the sky. It's a way of saying that it's raining really, really hard. How about that test was a piece of cake? Unless I put a piece of crumb cake on your table, that test was not actually a piece of cake. It's a way of saying that it was easy. Or saying that the answer was clear as mud. Well, mud is not clear, and this little phrase is saying that the answer really was not very clear. The parts that are bolded are the idioms, And one thing I want to point out is when you are writing an expository text or when you are writing your theme statements, try to stay away from idioms because not everybody understands an idiom. They think it might be the literal meaning. So stay away from idioms. Okay, the last set of words are going to be character trait type words. And these words come from the character trait handout that you received at the beginning of the year. Many of these are opposites or related, and I'll point those out as we go. So, first word is astute, and astute means clever, cunning, ingenuous, or perceptive. It most likely is going to be used when you're talking about somebody who's picking up on the underlining meaning of a conversation that maybe nobody else is getting, or somebody that is really clever. I would like to think that Albert Einstein was probably a fairly astute individual. A word associated with astute is precocious. Precocious means unusually advanced or mature in development, especially mental development. Now, precocious is usually associated with people who are younger, who have elevated mental abilities. So maybe this young woman is a precocious child because she's reading at a very young age. Next word is ungainly. Ungainly means not graceful or awkward or unwieldy or clumsy, much like your beloved English 1 teacher, and this is the reason why I ask you to put your bags underneath your desks instead of leaving them in the walkway, because I am as clumsy as they get. An example, Melman from Madagascar. Definitely ungainly. I mean, look at those legs. Next word is decrepit. Decrepit means weakened by old age, feeble, or infirm. Couple of examples. Here's a decrepit car, and here's a decrepit house. So at some point, these were probably in pretty good shape, but over time, they became decrepit. Next word is virtuous. Virtuous means conforming to moral and ethical principles. So somebody who is virtuous is going to hold on to their moral or ethical principles even if they are challenged to give up those principles. And on the opposite is unscrupulous. Unscrupulous means not having or showing a strict regard for what one considers right, not exact or precise. So somebody who is unscrupulous is not virtuous. So if you take a bribe, you are being unscrupulous. If you try to take advantage of somebody, you may be being unscrupulous. Somebody who is a thief is unscrupulous. So again, unscrupulous, think of it as the opposite of virtuous. Virtuous means holding on to those moral and ethical principles, whereas someone who is unscrupulous may not even have those moral or ethical principles. Degenerate means to fall below a normal or desirable level in physical, mental, or moral qualities. Another word for degenerate is deteriorate. Think about it this way. Something that is degenerate is usually means that something has lost that physical, mental, or moral quality over time. It's very similar to decrepit, just used in different ways. Let's talk about contentious. Contentious means tending to argument or strife or somebody who is quarrelsome. I'm sure all of you have that friend or that family member that loves to start an argument, or they will bring up topics on purpose just so that they can argue about those. Those family members and friends you may call contentious. So, our awesome gamekeeper from The Simpsons, contentious. Next word is sullen. Sullen means showing irritation or ill humor by a gloomy silence or reserve. I like to think of sullen as a little bit emo. These two words also go along with sullen, gloomy or dismal. And when we start reading Romeo and Juliet, you will quickly learn that Romeo is sullen at the beginning of the play because he's heartbroken over another woman named Rosaline. So, sullen, gloomy, and dismal. Your last word for these next 2 weeks is boorish. And boorish means unmannered or crude or insensitive. If you're eating at the dinner table and you're slopping your soup all over the place and you're drinking from the bowl and you have food dribbling down from your mouth, you may be explained as having boorish behavior. Or when Kanye jumped up on stage and interrupted Taylor Swift's acceptance speech at the VMAs, he could have been considered acting in a boorish way. So, there are your words for the next 2 weeks. A couple of study tips. You need to be able to make sure that you can match the word to the definition, use it correctly in a sentence, and create your own sentences for the words. Watch this video 3 or 4 times a week to refresh the words in your brain and to see the definitions and to see the visuals. It only will take you about 10 minutes. Quiz yourself, quiz your friend, make flashcards, make a foldable, or make your own slideshow with visuals to help you remember the word. And again, try to use them in your classes, try to use them in your writing, try to use them in your speech, because the more you use them, the better you will get, because practice makes perfect. Good luck!